Hi, I'm Thorsen, and I am the Global Sustainability Lead for FCM Consulting. We're definitely seeing a few different trends right now in the context of our customers and what that means in terms of how we engage and support them. I think the really interesting area that we're seeing is actually split a little bit down the regions. So in APAC, there's definitely a growing trend that larger companies are much more aware and willing to engage with actual sustainability projects. So carbon mitigation, whether that's offset contributions or other direct capture or categories, and really just making a straight financial transaction. They're very aware and ready to start doing that. Whereas in Europe, it's a lot more focused around the strategy of reductions. So they have very complex and quite ambitious goals in terms of science-based targets and emissions reductions, and they don't just want to throw money at the problem, they want to really engage and strategically work around what that means for their travel program within the broader goals. And then on the Americas side, it's sort of split between money and technology. So there's a lot of willingness to talk about sustainable aviation fuel in particular. I think that's borne by recent initiatives like the Inflation Reduction Act, but we're also seeing that they're very, very keen to engage in technology to help solve this problem. So technology for carbon budgets, for applying other reductions opportunities, and sort of looking at that side. And ultimately, from our perspective, it just means there's a really good opportunity to support clients in a large range of strategies. And obviously, how do we evolve the technology to support them in solving those problems? So I think the main initiatives for the next 12 months in terms of sustainability and corporate travel in particular, it's very much around more transparency in what's happening. There's a lot of talk with the recent regulatory updates from the EU side. There's obviously regulation that's come in France with certain routes that are being impacted. So there's a lot of structural impacts that are starting to happen. There's still a lot of talk around methodologies and that side of things. Ultimately, we're seeing a lot more companies that are committing to science-based targets, to very fixed reduction goals. So that's going to be the key. A lot of companies now have strict targets in place. They're going to have complex strategies to align with and execute against those. And some of the other initiatives, which I think are going to be a lot more important than just that baseline sort of accounting exercise, is how do we start to drive the behavior change? So just because we've got targets, those are tied to some pretty fixed and static methodologies. We have a whole host of tools and technology and data points that do talk to sustainability, but they're not really out there and accessible. So when airlines talk about using sustainable aviation fuel or having a better sustainable practice in sourcing their onboard food and beverage, we need to start being able to show that to travelers to really drive the increased adoption. Start looking at things like, obviously with EY's recent case study that was launched, having tools that can track your program's transition from short-haul flight to rail adoption. These are the practices that are really going to drive success in the short to medium term. And I think those are the practices that are really keen and important to look at. And even initiatives like what we're launching through FCM Consulting, our partnership with Kappa and Invest, the Global Sustainability Benchmark Report. This is an opportunity to analyze all your airlines across their entire operational footprint, not just an origin and destination emission calculation each time someone books a trip, but a really strategic layer to your entire sourcing practice and philosophy when it comes to selecting your suppliers. So this is something we need to get better at across all the categories, so hotels, rental cars, air as well, and rail obviously. And that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity and really emerging areas in the next 12 months. So in terms of transforming the customer experience, I think there's a couple of things to be really aware of. You have to be aware of what the goal is, because it's easy to transform an experience without solving the problem you're actually looking to get into. So anything that you're starting to adapt, change or evolve in that context, it has to be with the right goal in mind. So if, for example, you're looking at increasing adoption of sustainable travel choices, you have to make sure you've got the right triggers in place and the right information being shared to do that. And also it has to be done in a way that's still credible to the organizational reporting requirements. So if you are driving sustainable choice, make sure you still have the right reporting behind the scenes so that you're getting those right data points for your annual sustainability reports. And also, it's really, really important that you're able to quantify and track any of those choices that you are driving. It's no good if you're driving a lot of sustainable choice, but you're still calculating with an average methodology, because you're still then going to get the same average emission. The only way you'll then drive a reduction is by doing less of it. So again, really having a consistent understanding of what's our organizational goal and strategy for where we're going and what we're using, and then what are the tools that we can actually leverage to get us there. So that's something which I think is really key to understand. If we're going to be surfacing a lot of these elements around electric vehicles and other aspects, then make sure you're calculating your ground transport with vehicle type and not just an average emission per kilometre, for example.